Christine Guidi. I am the president and CEO of TeleConsult Solutions, and I've been a trusted advisor for over 24 years now, and I've been working with Vonage since the early 2000s.
I'm Zach Manzer, sales executive with Vonage. I've been with Vonage 2 years. I am part of the applications group, so I primarily focus on our unified communications and contact center solution.
My name's Charlie Mervis. I'm a solutions architect with Vonage. I've been here roughly 5 years. I'm primarily focused, as well as Zach, on unified communications, contact center, some artificial intelligence as well.
So I've been working with this client for well over 15 years in some telephony capacity of some sort. And as I was working with them, COVID came into play, and all of a sudden they realized how antiquated their phone system was. And after we got settled in and I had a meeting with the leadership, and I brought in the IT of the client and told them about other options. There are enormous amount of features that Vonage can offer, as well as the support and the time and money that will be saved. And I asked them if they were interested, and they said, yeah. And they said, when can we start? And I said, right now.
So this customer is looking to unify their communication solution while integrating with their mission critical applications, which is Teams and Salesforce. So to enhance employee productivity, the customer is looking to implement a unified cloud-based phone system integrated with their mission critical applications inside of Teams and Salesforce. They were also looking to leverage AI technology just to improve customer experience and employee productivity.
Another piece of the puzzle for this customer was actually the fact that they had a great many disparate systems. They were antiquated, they were going out of service, end of life. Just the inadequacy of that legacy system versus what we can do in the cloud. Also, everything that we brought to it in terms of, again, unified communications, and also the artificial intelligence piece was really large for these guys.
The client and I had several discussions, and we went out to bid, and they saw a lot of different providers. Vonage stood out from the get-go. They provided amazing support. The key, though, I'd like to mention is they listened to all of the customers' needs and wants. At the time, they were telling us how bad the system was. They were giving us the roadmap to design a solution. So one thing that we did do, and how Vonage shined, was, Zach, when you do your presentation, you talk about the Vonage stack, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as we go through, we talk about the actual PBX system, the demo. Charlie does an excellent job of showing the Vonage application. He shows a mobility app. Then a segue into Teams. They're a huge Teams customer. And in doing so, these guys were able to show them all the features. And as the customer was looking at the demo, it just started to get their wheels turning. And then we knew exactly what we needed to do, and Vonage could provide every single aspect of that.
So from the beginning of the opportunity, I think the Vonage team really took the time to understand the customer's needs. And because we took that time to understand it, we were able to tailor specific demonstrations to specifically what they needed to see, right? So when we showed up, we were showing them exactly what they wanted to see for a future state, as well as setting the foundation for all the future business with the chapters.
I think what's really important to note is that we take such pride in discovery, right? We have our process, right? Discovery, demo, proposal, negotiation. But going through that process, and really early on, you really have to ask all the questions. You really need to dig into what are the issues, what are the problems, and then we can come back in, and internally we discuss this, right? We kick it around. What's the best solution for that particular customer?
They did a great job, and we spent an hour talking about them. And then we talked about the customer service. That was a whole hour of saying, this is what we're going to do for you, Mr. Customer. We are going to value you. We're going to get you implemented seamlessly, professionally, and timely, and then provide you all of those resources. So it was just a fantastic journey. The customer and I went to Vonage, and we coordinated a meeting to start the final discussions of design call. And with that, the customer brought in all of their managers to tell us what exactly they were looking for. The customer just knew that they had an antiquated system and they knew where they wanted to go. They wanted to live in teams. So again, we listened and brought in those experts to design the solution.
Yeah, so the national headquarters actually didn't fully manage all of the IT for all of the chapter locations. So all the locations were federated and they could actually make decisions independently of what the national headquarters recommended. I think the one thing is they wanted to set up a phone system for each chapter that could be brought back into their Teams instance at national, pricing on a national level that we could scale out to all the chapters as well. At the national headquarters, they actually had 2 receptionists that were taking calls, fielding calls all day long. And a majority of those calls were people calling in to the national headquarters trying to get to the local chapter location. So, what we said is, what if we could have a bot have a conversation with that customer on the front end? So as they call in, a bot prompts them to say, which zip code are you trying to reach? And then literally that person just needs to speak the zip code, and then that call is automatically routed to the nearest chapter to them. So it completely eliminated the need for these receptionists to field those calls all day and allowed them to focus on more complex tasks.
As you were saying, you have a single Teams org or tenant as it's called, or Microsoft tenant, but all these independent chapters. They wanted the ability to have one portal, from a management standpoint, not only for Teams, but for all the PBXs. So one single login, single sign-on.
Right.
So all the endpoint, all the individuals, and all these different chapters could use a single Microsoft Active Directory instance, but everybody independent. The great thing is, we can do a 30-day proof of concept, right? So we do this all the time for our customers. We were able to give them an account, give them end users on it, all of the features and functions that they might want to test out. Plus, we could actually integrate it into their Teams instance. And in that case, right, they could just test everything end to end.
The challenges we had with this customer was really the one tenant ID.
Yeah.
That was a challenge that we had too, because the headquarters was very controlling on the application, and they had one tenant ID for the Microsoft Teams. But they wanted independent billing. They wanted every chapter location to actually be its own entity and have its own billing and portals and such. So when we went back to Vonage, they said, absolutely, we can do it. And that was the time when I realized that Vonage was really going to be the solution to do it all.
I should add, if I could, that ESU is the enterprise solution. So the idea of that is, again, that single portal for the PBX access, because all of the individual chapters are their own PBXs. But we have a methodology where you can, with one login, you can come into a single instance and all of those PBXs are lined up below it. So you can just do a quick search, you can find the individual chapter, and then you can jump into that individual PBX and make changes.
In our final meeting with Vonage to really present the solution was we came in with the pricing, of course, which was absolutely fantastic. Vonage really did help this client come in and meet that budget that they were needing. Secondly, they needed the support, and we talked about that already, about having the engineers there, the experts, the subject matter experts, to be able to go in and help them through the AI process and the Teams process. And then they brought in, was talking about the customer service, which we needed to have the ability to implement it. How were we going to do this? With all that being said, also Vonage was giving me the support that I needed to be able to handle this particular customer and guarantee that seamless implementation. So with all of that, the customer was just ecstatic. One of the processes that Vonage had offered, and we didn't ask for it, we didn't know what we didn't know. And when we were going through that last phase of the pricing and such, the customer was wanting to know how we were going to implement the service. Of course, they knew I was going to be there. And Vonage had offered to have a single point of contact, the same provisioner on every single order. Vonage really came in and brought in those resources to explain who was going to actually handle the actual implementation. But they ended up coming in with the actual solution to the customer care specifically, where they were going to assign a group of talent, the best in that implementation provisioning process. So we were given a dedicated provisioner and the same young lady every single time who knows the client's structure of the actual call flow and how they do business, their tenant ID, how they needed to handle all of that, which now it's becoming a very seamless implementation. Vonage is a one-stop shop. They provided everything and then some. We've got phases now in the future that we're going to be working on next year, or hopefully this year, that we'll be able to provide them.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, I mean, the chapter locations are really small, right? So typically, we would allocate a SMB resource to those types of chapters.
Right.
So we had to kind of, segue from that automated process to just assign an SMB resource and actually have a higher level resource to support the chapters as we onboard.
Would I sell Vonage again and recommend it to my other customers? Yes, I would. That's a conviction. Yes, there is so many resources available to me that I didn't even know. So to be open and upfront is, I learned a lot about Vonage through this journey with this customer. Whereas, and I say it to you guys on every call, the support is absolutely phenomenal. For me being a TA and supporting my customer, Vonage gives me those resources to be able to go to a dedicated customer support number that I can call. I get a live person or email, and I get response back in one day. It's phenomenal. No other carrier does this. So for me to do it again with another client, yes, hands down, 100%.